Hey guys, it's Alvin Taveras from Build to Rent, and the Wall Street Journal just came out with a new article listing Cape Coral, Florida as the worst housing market. Now, this is a city that I live in, that I invest in, that I'm raising my kids in, and so I'm naturally a little bit defensive. When I went a little bit deeper into the article, they cited a recent research study that lists Cape Coral as having the second most foreclosure in the nation. Now, when I looked into this, I saw the data seemed flawed, but I double checked with my good friend Jeff Tamarillo, who's known locally as a foreclosure king, to see if this data is accurate or if it's purposely misleading. Hint, hint, they're misleading on purpose. Jeff Tamarillo here with Alvin Taveras, and we're going to be reviewing the June 2025 Lee County, Florida foreclosure report. Jeff, what do you got?
This is a report we've been doing since 2007. We download it directly from the clerk's office. We call out everything that's not a mortgage foreclosure. We've been doing this for a long, long time. I always got to share my work done for me and shared with you. I kind of put these in there. In uncertain times, it's easy to overreact. Stay grounded and let numbers lead the way. Foreclosures do drive negative price pressure, especially, it's once you hit that negative feedback loop where they start just foreclosures rise. And 2025's got a lot of wild dynamics in it. It's just an interesting time. For the Gulf Shore business, Adam Data did this wonderful release that the media ran with, but it's not really accurate. It's just they came up with a way to grade a whole country, and shockingly enough, the places that people are interested in that would actually get clicks on their website are what they highlight. I notice Des Moines, Iowa is not on here, and even if it was, they probably wouldn't put it on here because not everybody says I need a house in Iowa. Most people would love to have a house in Florida or Texas or coastal Carolina. So ultimately, they are in the field of commerce and going to make decisions that'll help that. But what the Adam Data, which is what drove that Wall Street Journal report, they capture the notice of default, the notice of trustee sale, or the lis pendens, and then when it becomes real estate owned. So they're essentially inflating every foreclosure 300%. And then if you have a second and a first that both foreclose, then you're 600% on that same house. So
let's go a little bit deeper into that. So what you're saying is that there's different ways that each states collect data.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through the different ways of collecting foreclosure data.
There's the notice of default, which I don't even know how they capture that, which that typically is a lis pendens. But they have a lot of steps that they capture. And in some states, you literally have 2 steps and the house sells very quickly. To where Florida you have debtor's rights, and it's a judicial state. The judicial states, the debtor has more rights. So as they capture each one of these steps, they report it as a foreclosure action, which would lead you to believe that's a foreclosure. But what they're actually reporting is docket items in an individual foreclosure, and then they put them in a blender and then say this many foreclosure actions. I don't understand why you would do it that way, other than you're just trying to have something to talk about so you can sell data, which is what they do. I don't begrudge them for trying to make a living, but it's a little disingenuous how they report it. The media loves anything you can spoon feed them that they can report on. They email these reports to the media. They give them the talking points, so it's very easy for them to. They have a great PR system. Copy their PR system if you ever want to get rich. But you have you literally have a very flawed system that people are using to make decisions.
So what you're saying is that Adam's essentially the same owner with the same property. There's going to be several steps in that foreclosure process. If they do 3 different steps in that foreclosure process, they'll record 3 different data points for that same property, same buyer.
When I think that I'm bringing an action, that's a singular lawsuit.
Right.
So, but they're not catering to people like you and I. I don't need their data. I can just get the data. But yeah, that's how they capture their data. We just went over this, but you would have a lis pendens filed in January, a notice of sale in March, and an REO in May. So that shows up as 3 different actions. Even though it's only one case, it literally, it's at least a 3 times misrepresentation, and then particularly in judicial states, it is it definitely makes it look worse. That's why they don't differentiate between the judicial and the non-judicial states. I would have two different methodologies if I was
What,
them.
and so the easiest way to clean that up is just saying properties with foreclosure actions. If you just said this number of properties have foreclosure actions, that would solve or make that cleaner right away.
No, it's I put it at the end, but how you would actually do this is just unique properties in foreclosure would be the only way to put it.
Sure.
Would the only way that makes sense. You've got a flawed data set, then you have a very spastic headline, and then it hits the echo chambers on social media, and that's what literally is going on right now on Facebook. It's worthy of a bowl of popcorn on some days to go look at the comments. But and you have people looking at these things and actually using it to help make decisions. I mean, other than marrying someone or having children, buying a home for most people is about the biggest decision you're ever going to make. So that's why investors are sort of weird. I mean, we just buy houses because it's a good deal. And for most people, buying a house is such a major deal.
It's one of the reasons why, like, for an investor, get started early, because once you kind of break through that hurdle of thinking of real estate as being a big deal, the easier it is to scale up. People make it out to be such a giant hurdle, and you want to just rip that Band-Aid off and get going. It's such a giant wealth creator. You don't want to delay that start.
I can tell you, as a Marine, rappelling was always a big deal, and the first time off the tower was always the worst. Once you've done it once, you realize I survived. I watched people they would literally throw them off the tower, and then they would tighten the line up and lower them down, so they realized, we're not going to let you die. Now get up and do this. And it's the first time's always the hardest. And particularly when you start seeing the benefits of owning real estate, the tax benefits, we are printing our way out of debt. So they're diluting the dollar. It's just so many wonderful things of owning real estate that, but you got to do one. You got to start with one. Everybody has to, it's very rare to somebody just have a cash flowing portfolio of 100 properties from zero to that. You have to grind your way through it. But how not to be duped on this? Use a primary data source to go directly to the county. You can literally go and click, and it goes right into CSV. Lee County, Florida in general. That's why you see so many Florida man stories, because our public records are so transparent. You can get everything in Florida, to where at one point I was in Ohio in 2007, and it was really an act of God to get data, to get like really good data. The girls in the courthouse, I literally bribed them with pastries, and they showed me how to get in the computer and actually figure out how to get the data, because I was trying to generate a foreclosure list to figure out what was going on there. But yeah, I dedupe the filings. There is a lot of list pendants that show up multiple times, and then track the filing dates, in my opinion, and just understand how many properties are in foreclosure.
When we look at the signal versus a noise, I think that's kind of what you're referring to.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of noise out there. If you go on Facebook, if you go to the Wall Street Journal, a lot of noise out there. And you actually want to figure out, say, what are the cues to actually trigger that moment where I can invest, where I should invest? And a lot of that has to involve doing your own due diligence. I did a YouTube video where I was talking about Florida's population growth and how it's projected to grow another 1.5 million over the next 15 years. And people were reacting what, this is inaccurate. People are leaving Florida. It's like, no. People are always coming and going from Florida. You have to look at the net population growth, which is, looking at the births and immigrations versus the deaths and people leaving, right? The net is going to be a lot greater than the
people that are leaving Florida. They always come back. I can tell you, as being a real estate broker, most of the people that we sold their house, I told them, you're going to be back in 3 to 5 years. You keep the house and go up there and rent, see if you like it. They always sell. They go up there, they buy a house. A large percentage of them, 3 to 5 years later, we're selling them a new house. So it's, I get the frustrations. There can be, traffic in season's bad. Sometimes you'll have the hurricanes, stuff like that. But I have a 22-foot center console boat, and when I'm standing on the front of it catching trout, looking at the fish houses in Pine Island Sound, there's nowhere else I'd be. get your own data, especially if you're deploying your own money. You should be using your own information or something that you vetted that's true. The media, they're in the clickbait business. I mean, they're just designed to get eyeballs on their advertisers' ads. That's what they're there to do. They don't. If you wanted to go broke, you would have a boring, statistically factual news channel that didn't have any biases, and you would go broke because nobody would watch it. Because for most people, they don't watch documentaries. They watch, Sally Jesse Raphael or the Jerry Springer Show, or they're looking for entertainment, not for not for knowledge. So this is my favorite chart. This is what we start out the report with. Here you got the last cycle, and here you have the current cycle. This is the worst market in the country.
If you zoom in to just looking at the last, maybe 6 months, it does look pretty bad.
I'll show it to you, but perspective really matters. If you, but especially January was a very low number, like 25. But for perspective, this is what a really bad market actually looks like. So, right. And then you had the second wave. That's when BlackRock and all them guys came into the equation too. But that's actually from 2006 forward. Now let's look at from 15 forward. That's a normalizing market with a linear trend line. And then from 2020 forward. Now I'm ready to just do a 2023 forward chart too. Just because the pandemic, there was nothing going on. But if you look, you had December was very pandemic-esque. Okay. So that's why it's looking like this huge rise up. And they don't care the big picture, what it matters, because they're not deploying capital. They're not buying assets. They're not selling assets. They're just trying to capture eyeballs.
This is showing us getting back to a baseline. Is that partly because of the foreclosures were basically stalled during the COVID period, or is this something else?
There's that, but another thing everybody wants to compare it to 2008. How many houses have we added in Lee County since 2008? A
lot more people live here now. Yes.
Yeah. So, your population's up 200,000 people. So how many more mortgages is that? So that in a normal market, they should be going up. We should have more foreclosures. I was sitting around when I did this report trying to figure out what number would I really start paying attention. And because we only do this report now every 2 or 3 months. We used to put it out on the 2nd. It was a massive media item back in 2008. But I think at 400 list pendants a month, which we haven't come close to that since like 12. But at 400 list pendants a month is when I'm really going to start paying attention to this. So at this point, people get divorced, people die, just things happen. There's those negative life events, and generally when those things happen, you tend to not make good decisions and stop paying your mortgage. So, it's just negative life events. People do lose jobs. Things happen in a normal market. The post-pandemic was not a normal market, just like 2005 was not normal. If you were a commissioned salesperson, it was the most amazing time. You could eat sushi every day. So sushi every day for lunch because we're selling a lot of houses. I hope they save the money. But yeah, that's where they're drawing this data from. The linear trend line shows it's going up, but I go to that. That's perspective as to what a really bad day is. And then this is a normal market. And if you look at from 2015 forward, we've never broke 160. Now, 50% of them tend to convert to a certificate of title. So in May, we had 1,950 sales. Okay, and if you had 70 foreclosures, that means 9 months later, you should have 35 bank-owned properties. We don't have nearly that because they get worked out. But do the math. If you had 35 of, say, 1,500 sales, is that enough to drive a market? Absolutely not. So, the context and the math matters. That's why everybody's convinced 08's coming. When the foreclosures go vertical is when you start saying, yeah, that's going to happen. Which I keep saying this, why 08 probably won't happen. We all know what we did wrong. We know what we should have done in 08. We're all funded. and we have the knowledge to use it and the databases. So most of us, particularly that were here in '08, we are ready for it. That's why it won't happen.
So a lot of investors are also hoping the market gets worse because that's a great buying opportunity for them. And because they are there waiting with capital ready to deploy, it means that obviously it won't get as bad as it can because there's a very healthy safety net there in the market. And that's something that we did not see in '08, where there was a financial crisis. People call it a housing crisis. It wasn't a housing crisis. It was a financial crisis.
Yeah, no, the underlying, it was such a wild time. And then you also have to understand what we did in reaction to the global financial crisis, to the money supply, and then more importantly, what we did to the money supply in the pandemic has completely changed the economy and how things are going to happen. And I told somebody the other day, I'm like, I think we're in more of a managed economy. I think they understand how to manipulate the money supply to get some outcomes. And in a financially repressive backdrop, deflation is an empire killer. You cannot have deflation, so they're not going to allow it to happen. They're going to do everything in their power for that not to happen.
And the other thing worth mentioning is whether you like Powell or not, the Fed has a lot of tools at their disposal. So we're not already in a super low interest rate environment where you can't go lower. Right? We can definitely go lower than where we currently are. So I think it's also saying that the government is almost slowing down what the boom that we could be experiencing with regards to real estate and other industries. And so that's another major tool that's ready, if there is a bigger crisis were to occur. The other point is that housing crises are actually extremely rare. We only had two of them, which was the Great Depression and what we just had in '08. And a lot of us have recency bias where we look at that as if it's normal. It's not. The stock market will have 3 crashes every 10 years, right? Every decade, they would have number of crashes. Housing isn't like that. It's very illiquid. It's very slow moving. And there are a lot of financial institutions and tools that are available to go ahead and take over distressed properties, which allows us to not have, and you mentioned it as well, the devaluation of the dollar is one of the reasons that makes housing such a phenomenal investment, where you're buying a property based on today's price using tomorrow's dollar. And tomorrow's dollar is so much weaker than today's dollar. So just as time goes on, the equity position tends to get stronger. And also, what you're paying, like dollar wise, like in real dollar amount, ends up being a lot less than any other asset.
Gronk does a great job on, I guess it's X. I need to start calling it X. Just start asking questions about financial repression in relation to real estate. Does a great job. I mean, and you can just keep asking it questions, and it's not gospel, but it'll help you get your head around the concept. But to go back to Powell, did we not achieve a soft landing? Nobody's giving the man credit for it. Is this not 3 years later and now a soft landing?
Yeah, I would say it is. Yeah. Inflation's also down. Yep.
I agree rates should probably be lower, but inflation's terrible. I mean, inflation will have people in the streets. So he has to be mindful of that. But I mean, he achieved the soft landing. And you remember that was the big debate for a long time in the media, soft landing or not, or
right. The other question is whether or not we should continue to have a dual mandate, whether we should tie inflation with unemployment, and unemployment's lower than ever, or lower than it's been in recent memory, and inflation also has come down with Trump's tariffs on top of that. So
yeah, it's so. I mean, I just wish I could get a 1 minute advance Truth Social truth, so I could buy some puts and calls when that stuff hits social media. Because man, you want to talk about moving markets with press and send on your phone. I wish I had that power. We would be on my yacht doing this interview.
Yeah. So in summary, you got to get your own data. You got to go deep into the numbers. You got to see the real opportunities, and you have to understand the real wealth creators of real estate.
Well, perspective too.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, it's worth saying this as well. but you should always be prepared financially to take advantage of the opportunities that come in front of you as well. One of the things that we often don't talk about is just having a very high savings rate, having an emergency fund, being able
Mhm.
to ride the waves so that when opportunities arrive, you are ready to take action and you're ready to go ahead and be greedy. And only people who are fearful, people who weren't prepared, who don't have a nest egg. And so that's the other part of it, is take care of your personal finances.
Yeah.
So again, we're saying the opposite. We don't believe a major issue will occur in Cape Coral, Southwest Florida, at least not significantly. But there are people who a flat tire can wreck their lives. And so if you're in that situation, yeah, you're always around the corner of having a major catastrophic event. But for a lot of other people who have a high savings rate, who have an emergency fund, a flat tire is not a big deal. You just deal with it and move on with your life.
It's the opportunity, not a flat tire, but, a crashing housing market, opportunity of a lifetime. I seen people, I seen one guy take it literally his entire net worth and buy rentals. And now he's a very wealthy man and travels the world because he didn't sell them, more importantly, too. You don't sell your income for gain. You tend to burn that capital at some point and then you don't have any income, but he bought a large portfolio and kept it. I think he sold one for a specific reason. And it's the way you get wealthy is you buy in crashes. It's the old Charlie Munger, when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing swimming trunks.
We'll leave it there. Jeff, thank you for your time. Where can people find out more about you?
You shoot me an email, jeff.southwestflorida@gmail.com. If you're looking for this kind of data, go to swflreia.com. We put out foreclosure reports. We've also been putting out reports on the percentage of corporate ownership in the area as well. You can join our mail list. We send stuff like this out all the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.